Know thyself. Long enough has that poor self of thine tormented thee. Thou wilt never get to know it, I believe. Think it not thy business, this knowing of thyself. Thou art an unknowable individual. Know what thou canst work at, and work at it, like a Hercules. That will be thy better plan. Thomas Carlyle. Welcome to the Lost Traveler podcast. I'm your host, Henry Cameron Allen, and I'm very excited to welcome Michelle Smith today as my special guest and new friend. And we are trying to find the tools to meet this unexpected pandemic time and an uncertain future. And I'm bringing together experts in their field of coaching and mentorship and leadership, and really helping our listening audience to sort of be guided on this journey together with all of us. We're all human. We all have the tools that we have, and we're all striving for better than we have. And how do we do that right now? So Michelle, welcome. Very happy to have you here and delve into your own personal toolkit. Thank you for joining us today.
Awesome. I'm really grateful to be here, Henry. Thanks for having me.
So before we go headfirst into your work, share a little bit about your biography. Where do you come from, and how did you get here from there?
Sure. Well, how much time do we have today? I have a lot I could say about that, as most of us do.
Plenty.
So thank you. Wonderful. So I grew up in a little town in Fort Atkinson called Fort in Wisconsin, southeastern Wisconsin, and small town girl at heart, very humble beginnings, and actually a pretty troubled childhood. And so it's definitely shaped me and brought me to where I am. And my mom, I didn't know it when I was growing up, but my mom is bipolar, and I found that out later in years. But that really made for a lot of times when she just wasn't connected with me. And so having her not emotionally available to me has really shaped, who I am, and a lot of things that I've learned about myself. And my father was a functional alcoholic. I had a lot of really bad examples around me. But what it caused for me was a desire to step out of that and not become a victim like so many people I'd seen around me in my life. And it gave me a very strong ambition and drive to make a life for myself, and took me through college. I was the first person in my family to go to college. I graduated third in my class. And I created a career and a life for myself. And about 8 years ago, I found myself in a situation where I wasn't with the right person in my marriage. I had to make a very significant life change, and it was really hard for me. It really made me pause and think about who I was supposed to be, right? And what was creating my current reality. And so on the past 8 years, I've really been on a journey of self-awareness and self-development and kind of evolution into who I am, and how do I rise out of my childhood and all the things that created in me. And along the way, like, how do I inspire others too? Because I know I'm not the only mom, the only woman in the world who's been through this, who hasn't had a mom to guide her, a very stable home life. And so I started really looking for mentors in my own life and things that would inspire me. And that's led me to where I am today, where just this year, in the midst of COVID, I really felt compelled to say, how do I take what I've learned and help other people, and help people find their positivity and resilience, and really understand themselves enough to know how to channel their reactions constructively when life throws, crap at you like we've had this year.
Well, I think a lot of our listeners are going to be able to relate to that. I certainly can. Your journey is something that a lot of us have experienced in one way or another. And because we have more tools accessible to us today through the internet, especially, but also understanding human psychology,
Mhm.
it allows us to be the parents that we didn't get to have. It allows us
Right.
to be the mentors that we needed in our youth when we were at the end of our rope without anyone guiding us. How do we get How do we get through this? We've got listeners in more than 20 countries now, and I'm sure that that's the case
Yes.
everywhere. It's a universal human condition. Have you found that knowing what you know now, has that led you to, through your understanding of your parents and the challenges that they faced in their time in your youth, um, has it led you to be able to forgive them? Because that's a really powerful,
Mhm.
it's an important question in terms of moving forward, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you bring that up because I've done a lot of work around that this summer. And my father passed away 10 years ago. So it's been hard for me because that was before I really kind of found out who I was. And so now that I know what I know, I do have a lot of regret that I wasn't able to have those conversations with him and really get to know him on a very different level and relate differently. My mother is still alive. She's not very functional or really cognitively able to have the conversation with me. So I've been doing a lot of work and actually met a wonderful woman this year. And anyone who's going through, it's a sort of grief. It really is. It's grieving the loss of not having a mother as I was growing up, and forgiveness. When I look at that, it's difficult because a lot of us look at forgiveness as excusing the behavior or pretending it didn't happen. But that's not really what it's about. And there's a book called the Grief Recovery Handbook. So if those of you out there haven't read it yet or going through grieving, it's a wonderful, wonderful tool. There's a quote in the book that made me step back and really pause this year that said, forgiveness is letting go of the hope of a different or better yesterday. So
Mm.
it's not about excusing the behavior. It's about allowing ourselves the peace to say, I'm never going to change the past. I have to come to terms with it for me, for my family, to be able to power through and move forward. So it's very hard, but you have to almost flip your perspective and look at it completely differently than what you might have thought forgiveness was before.
Your generous sponsorship and individual support of the Lost Traveler podcast benefits the Lost Travelers Club, a charitable project under the fiscal sponsorship of United Charitable, a nonprofit 501c3 organization. The Lost Travelers Club focuses primarily on the needs of parents who have outlived their beloved children. We recently launched our new Brain Candy Project wing, providing art supplies to children still struggling with critical or terminal health-related conditions. We hope to raise enough funds to launch Brain Candy, an arts and literature magazine created by and for these young people. Find out more at www.braincandy.online. Thank you.
And to understand that forgiveness isn't necessarily for the other person's sake, but for your
Yes.
own. Right?
Absolutely. That's key. It's really for your own. And even if you like with my mom, I've done a lot of work around writing out how I feel. And I'm never going to give that to her. She's not going to understand it, but it's a release for me. And being able to get it out of my head and onto paper, it makes it more tangible and it's easier to work through.
You know, one tool that I have used a lot with my clients, but also in my own life when I'm going through a tough time with someone, be it a family member or a partner, um, is something, and I can't remember for the life of me where I found this tool or who gave it to me, but I've been using it for probably 20 or 30 years now. And it's quite simple. It's a love letter that you write. And you may or may not give it to the other person, like you're saying, you know, the things
Hmm.
that you write down, you don't necessarily share because it's really a tool for you in your journey. And to
Exactly.
go down, you know, dear so and so, I feel angry because blank. I feel sad because blank. I feel frustrated because blank, and go down the whole litany of things, prefacing it all with I, because you're owning your
Hmm.
feelings, right? This is how I
Right.
feel. It may not be how you feel, and that's okay. This is for me. I feel this because this. And then at the end of the letter, the last line is, and I love you because.
Hmm. I
And
was just going to say that, Henry, that
yeah,
in my work too, it's not just been for the things that I regret about my childhood, but also the things that I maybe never told my mom I'm grateful for.
yeah,
So she taught me at an early age when we were really little. Mom was wonderful. Like she would tuck us in and we got lots of I love yous and lots of hugs. And I have my boys get that because of her,
yeah.
so I give her a lot of gratitude. I'm very grateful for that. And I probably never told her that. So it's not just the things that we struggle with, it's also the good stuff too.
Of course.
There's
And
some of that in there.
to finish the letter on that note is a sort of a release, and it's ending it with that
Hmm.
positivity like you're talking about. It's
Yeah.
so important, you know, in a time we are feeling not only nationally but globally divided, when we're surrounded by so much negativity and hate speech and um, you know, this division. I think this process is really important to go through in terms of forgiveness, in terms of
Hmm.
striving to understand where other people are coming from, but moreover, understand your own feelings and understand your own journey so that you know how to meet it, right? When we're talking about meeting this time, part of that is coming to grips with the fact that we all have people that we know, either close to us or acquainted with us, who are going to be on one side of an issue or another.
Hmm.
You know, it's that us versus them kind of thing. And I feel passionately about the things that I feel passionately about, but it doesn't always correlate with people that I love, right?
Right.
And we see on Facebook and other social media people unfriending and blocking people who think and feel differently than they do. How do you approach that, and how do you advise others to meet that?
Oh gosh, it's very hard because especially when you talk about topics that we're dealing with this year that are so heated and contentious. And I think the premise of my coaching is really about being self-aware and being able to flip your perspective. And a lot of that comes with, like you said, pausing to try to think about what lens is that other person seeing through, because our perspective comes from experience. It comes from all of the things that we've had in our personal lives that give us these beliefs and our values. And it's very hard to see through other people's lenses, just like the old saying, take a walk in someone else's shoes, right?
Mhm.
So I am a very strong component of simple practices like pause and take a breath and try to connect with your feelings. Like what is causing you that anxiety? Which of your values is this going against? Or what is the trigger that this is bringing up in you from your personal childhood or personal experiences? And try to disconnect so much from the emotion to think about the context that that conversation is happening in. Now, in some cases, you just have to walk away, right? And I have personally unfollowed people on social media, but they're the people that aren't constructive about it. So there's a way to be constructive about your opinions, and there's a way to be destructive with your opinions. So it's definitely a big challenge, though, and a lot of people really struggle with it right now.
Yeah, yeah. It's for me, it's about really being aware of who's in your circle, and
Hmm.
that finding the empowerment in that, you know, that you really have to you know, sort of figure out for yourself what frequency you are willing to tune into and welcome into your immediate
Right?
world. This is ancient wisdom, by the way. This is not anything new. Um,
No,
but I
it's
think
not.
if there's a gift to be had in this time with this pandemic, is that we are forced by nature to isolate and to sit back and reflect on all these things. As a mother of
Hmm.
boys, I'm sure that you really and let me ask you, how have they met um, that wisdom? Because I know that it has been largely kept from young men and boys,
Hmm.
the permission to explore your feelings and to identify as an emotional person. who is in touch with their masculine and feminine side. I think, this being in touch with your emotional side is part of the divine feminine, and we don't allow boys still in many cultures around
Yeah.
the world to tap into their divine feminine. Likewise, we don't really encourage young women to tap into their divine masculine, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it's all about that balance. It's all about coming into balance as nature does. We're not separate from the natural world. We are part of it, and we can tap into those rhythms. Do you agree with that? How has it been
No,
for
I
you boys?
I definitely agree. But I also agree with you for my teenage boys, it is a challenge. I am very much open emotionally to have conversations with them and talk to them about what's going on in the world. Their father, not as much. I'll be honest about that. He's a wonderful father, wonderful man, but like you said, it's that male perspective that my emotions make me look weak if I show my emotions, and that's an age-old concept as well. But it's open and encouraged in my home, and we do see pieces of that. They are very resilient. I'm realizing how independent I've kind of taught them to be, which has been a little bit hard, when mom wants the human connection.
Mhm.
But they're doing very well and showing their resilience in all of the things with school and everything happening this year. And I do know they're learning a lot of lessons about financial security, about making good decisions, about patience, even in a lot of ways this
Mhm.
summer. So it's been quite a journey though, being here with them,
Yeah, I can
especially during
imagine.
quarantine. I love them to death. I love them to death. And I know I see their skills that are going to take them into the future to be very strong, independent, contributors to society. So I'm proud of that.
Chip off the old block, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we
Definitely.
are, we are the sum of all of our parts. We do take and we do glean from our
Hmm.
parents and our teachers throughout our lives, our grandparents certainly, and other people in our community. Um, I think it's a really interesting exercise to right now, universal exercise, to
Mm.
be able to take a half step back and look at, our tendency as human beings to want to keep everything organized and in neat little boxes, and it doesn't always work that way. When we're
No.
talking about male and female, boys and girls, men and women, these are broad generalizations because every human being is unique, and we have different modus operandi. There are people who deal really well with crisis, and in the
Hmm.
same family there are people who do not deal well with
Yeah.
crisis, right? And they're raised under the same roof, and some are more in touch with their feelings, others aren't. I think that may be one of the big lessons of this time, is for all of us to stop sort of grouping people
Hmm.
into lumps. We For me, that's part of the problem, is this division, lumping everybody into the same box,
Oh,
and rather
right.
than rather than meeting every individual as both a teacher and a student. Everyone
Absolutely.
has something to teach us. Everyone has something to learn from us, right? We are all teachers, all students, and never has there been in my lifetime a better time to recognize that. And we're going to take a brief pause right now to hear a word from our sponsor.
'21st century life skills warrant 21st century education. Every human being is born into a classroom, each of us given the same homework, the same core assignments. Personal care skills, emotional literacy, financial literacy, environmental literacy. These and other essential life skills are unique, learned and used by each of us every day of our lives. Indeed, they are the common thread in our humanity, core to individuals and the communities they construct, surviving and thriving. raising the bar on life skills education for all. This is the mission of Parenting 2.0. Visit www.parenting2pt0.org for more information.
It's been amazing this year, just with, I got furloughed in April and I've been working for 22 years at basically the same organization. And when you talk about throwing yourself completely out of your comfort zone and having to adapt, that was probably one of the most traumatic experiences of my life, even aside from my divorce and my dad. My identity in a lot of ways was in my work. And when I stepped out of that and I said, what is this? Where's the opportunity here for me, right? And that's when I started really connecting with other people. And just to be able to make the global connections I've made this year with the virtual, the way we've opened up as a world, right? Virtually with people everywhere.
That's how we met.
And you hit the nail on the head too. It's really looking at, okay, every person is coming at it, like I said, through a different lens. And you have to step back and first seek to understand where they're coming from. None of us should be grouped together. We are all unique, imperfectly perfect human beings, right? And it's really, truly amazing. And I try to look at that with my kids too. Like I said, my 13-year-old is very different than my 17-year-old in the way he thinks and processes information. And they grew up in the same parents, same household. So we can never take it for granted that any one of us are the same. We just can't.
I love that you said that everybody's perfect in their own way, because
imperfectly perfect.
it's amazing. I didn't grow up in the States. I grew up all over the world. And so I have a bit of a different, unique sort of perspective. And yet I hear the same phrases repeated all over the world. The first time I heard nobody's perfect was in 4th grade. I was at the American school in Brasilia, Brazil. And my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Ardeline, who was awesome, we were doing some kind of a drawing of our family and our house. I think it had something to do with our house and our family. And so I drew something and I didn't like what was on the paper. And I crumpled it up and I threw it across the room, sat there with my arms folded and a little storm cloud over my head. And Mrs. Ardeline came up to me and put her hand on my shoulder. And she said, "Oh, Henry, nobody's perfect." I looked up at her incredulously, like, what? I said, "Mrs. Ardeline, how can I be any different than I am right now?" And I still hold to that. We are as perfect as we can be in the moment that we are in. But the gift that we have as human beings is the ability to imagine what we uniquely perceive as better from this moment forward, right? If we all tapped into that for ourselves, for our families, for our communities, for our state, for our country, our world, can you imagine what would be possible if people,
we'd be a powerful force.
If people understood their power and that they are already as perfect as they can be. They are just as perfect as they can be, but we get to strive for better, right? And it's in striving where the magic happens.
Yeah, and showing up, being courageously authentic every time we show up. I had a turning point moment, and there's actually a story behind my coaching business, and it's called Two Different Boots. So I'll share that story with you.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
Gosh, it was shortly after my divorce, about 8 years ago, a little more than 8 years ago, and it was a normal morning, nice sunny morning. I think it was like February. And I had gotten off to work. The boys got off to school without fighting, which was awesome because, they were young back then. And I pull up into the parking lot at work and I step out of the car and, one foot at a time, like I always do. And I happened to look down at the ground and there it was. I was wearing one black boot and one brown boot. So I had two different boots. And I lived an hour away from work. And I had a meeting in like 15 minutes. So there's no way I could make it home in time to change my shoes or, go buy new shoes. And I had just taken a new role at the company, and I had more responsibility, and I was going through this divorce and feeling very insecure in a lot of ways. And I was like, what do I do? I can't go in the office like this. Like, I can't let people see me in two different boots. And I had to sit there for a minute. I'm like, oh my God. I just said, you know what, Michelle, you just got to own it. You just have to own who you are, and you have to go in there with your two different boots and hold your head up high. And you know what's so funny is that nobody even noticed. Like, I think the two people that noticed that I talked to all had their own story. And it was like a Me Too moment. It was a
Wow.
connection moment. And that really was the time when I said, I just got to be me. I got to show up who I am. I have to embrace who I am. And that's how I'm going to connect with people. And ever since then, I've been a better leader. I've been a stronger mom. I've been a more positive like it was a really freeing time in my life. And
Wow.
I started writing my blog about 3 years ago, and that was the first post in my blog. So a little shameless plug for my blog here.
Well, I'll put a link in
Go
the description.
Perfect. It's someofourchoices.com. And the premise is, kind of integrates with everything I do, but that our life is really made up of the sum of our choices, some like SUM. And every choice we make takes us on a different path, right? And we
Right.
go winding roads and loop-de-loops and all of that fun stuff. But we eventually really end up where we're supposed to be. And part of along the way, you have to be courageously, authentically yourself.
That's right.
And it was a great turning point moment for me.
I love that story, and I love the name Two Different Boots, because that's who you were in that moment.
Yeah.
You don't always wear two different boots,
No.
right? But you
No.
met the moment authentically. I think that's so
Mhm.
powerful. I completely agree with you. We're totally on the same wavelength. I preach about this a lot. There's no time machine that exists yet to take us into the past. As much as a science fiction buff as I am, to repair or remedy or change anything that's come before this moment. There's no
Right.
time machine to take us into the future, not even 10 minutes, right? To project something that doesn't exist yet. All we have is this moment. And this moment is surrounded by what I call an infinite peacock tail of possibilities, right?
I love that.
And all we have to do is choose one, choose a direction, choose a point B to go from this moment, right?
Yep.
And if you arrive at that point B from that choice, like you were saying, and you don't feel good, you don't feel safe, you don't feel right, guess what? That moment is also surrounded by an infinite
Yes.
cocktail of possibility. Choose another one.
Mhm.
Go to a different moment, and it's in the moment. It's instantaneous, right? So I don't fear anything. I don't fret. I don't worry. That cured my not that I've ever been a fearful person or a worrisome person, but I think that a lot of people are, especially in our
Mhm.
time. They always have been throughout history. Um, Nobody's perfect is huge. The other phrase that I hear a lot still around the world is, I don't have a creative bone in my body.
Mm.
Have you not heard that your entire life?
I have. I
Right?
used to think I didn't until I
See?
looked at, my creativity is in my writing and my stories and my speaking.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'd love to do a study. And if anybody listening would like to join me on this search, to find out who said that first and why did it go viral before viral was a thing, This has been generational programming
Mhm.
that goes back many generations. Nobody's perfect, and I don't have a creative bone in my body. Every spiritual belief, every religion around the world says something in its sacred texts that is tantamount to, we are all created in God's image, or a reflection of the divine, right? Well, if the majority of human beings on the planet really believe that, who are we not to be creative? We are imbued with all the same powers as we
Mhm.
ascribe to the creative force of the universe,
Right.
right? We have the power to create other human beings. We have the power to create a garden. We have the power to create delicious food or a poem, right? Or write a book. There are so many things that we can do. How do we remedy that? Other
Mhm.
than living authentically and showing
Yeah.
people and maybe doing a podcast or writing a book or a blog, um, how do we help people through those sort of self-limiting perceptions?
That's interesting. I actually coach around that. I just wrapped up a session last week where we really dig into, what are your limiting beliefs from the way you grew up, and the things, those moments in your life that have put like blocks in your head, basically. Like for me, I always had, okay, I'm not going to be a great mom because I didn't have a great mom. And but you have to know those things about yourself. So sometimes finding your creativity, finding those things that you're really good at, means breaking down those walls, right? And that's very hard for people. But the first step is being aware that they're there. Because we can go through life, have these little voices in our head all the time telling us that we're not good enough, that we're not this or we're not that, and just not even realize where they're coming from because we're on autopilot. We're just taking things an hour at a time and just doing what we do. And all of a sudden 40 years go by and we don't know why we did what we did.
And that is also ancient wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
right? You look at the Oracle of Delphi in Greece, right? What is above the cave? What is written above the cave? Know thyself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Before
So
you
many people
start
don't.
before
Yeah.
you start looking for wisdom outside of yourself, know yourself first before you
Mm-hmm.
walk through that door, right? I for years, and still I'm peripherally connected, but are you familiar with Waldorf schools?
Yes.
Rudolf
Yeah.
Steiner. The first year of a Waldorf teacher's training, the entire first year, their foundation year, is studying their own biography.
That's awesome.
Can you
I
imagine if
think more people should do that.
every teacher, whether you are in a school teaching children, whether you're a coach, whether you're, teaching mechanics, right? That knowing yourself is really the first step to empowerment and changing the world. I really believe really studying your foundation. Where did you come from? And not only your what you've gleaned in this life, but I've started researching my genealogy. I've been looking
Mm-hmm.
for stories of my ancestors. What did they have that I've inherited?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Good,
Yeah.
bad, and ugly.
Yeah. I was just going to say that because that's scary for a lot of people to think about, because you have
It
to humble yourself enough to admit that, okay, yeah, I learned some great things, but this also, I maybe have some bad habits or some things that are hard for me to think about. But that's all part of growing and learning and becoming who you're meant to be.
A great mentor of mine taught me almost on the first day, I think, that if you're focused on changing a bad habit, then you're still focusing on the negative. You're still focused on that habit, right? Even
Mm-hmm.
if you're trying to resolve it, your focus is there. But if you learn a new behavior, if you learn a new skill, right, or a new perspective, then that automatically and effortlessly resolves what you consider to be a bad habit because you've learned something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't work too hard.
I tell my group to focus on the outcome, right? So not what you're doing right now, but what you want it to look like. And
Mhm.
then, like you said, it looks like a different habit to get you there. So you're flipping your perspective to put it in a positive light. And it's much easier to implement when you're looking at things that way.
Yeah, I agree. People work too hard.
Yeah.
And it isn't until we know that,
Right.
we know ourselves enough to know that, that we realize that, wow, and you hear a lot of that regret too, oh, if only
Mhm.
I had known this, then I wouldn't have done that. But the truth is that everything that you celebrate about yourself has come from learning those lessons. It's not a
Mhm.
failure in my estimation if you've learned from it.
Right.
I know a lot of people who, say that, the road to success is paved with failure. I disagree emphatically. I think that failure means a full stop, that it's the
Right.
process is ended. But if you have learned from that, that's why I don't believe in mistakes either.
Right. They're
Every
all learning experiences.
every part of your biography has led us to this conversation and this
Mhm.
moment. Every
Yeah,
single thing,
exactly.
every
Yeah,
struggle, every
it's
success.
funny, I coach on, sorry, we have so
Oh, go
much to say.
ahead.
So I just actually posted on LinkedIn last night that, you have to look at everything as a learning experience. So it isn't a failure. I don't like to use the word failure. It's a stepping stone. It's a growth opportunity. So what is this teaching me? Even when things out of your control come at you, it's what is this trying to teach me versus why is this happening to me? And that's how you pull yourself out of it and how you stay positive and how you keep moving forward.
And that's how you break through the role of victim,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Is getting past that. Why is this happening to me? Well, honey, it's happening.
Right. You
And
got to find a way to work through it.
if it was meant to be otherwise, it would be. I mean, that's a simple
Mhm.
truth, right? If we were meant to be having a different conversation with somebody else in this moment, we would be, right? So really to be able to experience this moment fully, even with the challenges that we are facing, allows us to be present fully in our lives and in the lives of the people that we care about. And isn't that the
Absolutely.
best lesson, is to be an example of that?
Listen up. How can a sock, a patch, or an insole help so many people live their best lives pain free, balanced, and strong? Scientifically speaking, there is a proprietary pattern embedded in Vox, socks, and insoles that touches specific neuropoints and other receptors in the metatarsal or ball of the foot, creating homeostasis or balance in the brainstem. This prime real estate in your brain is responsible for automatic functions like balance, stability, strength, power, range of motion, flexibility, mobility, and so much more. The Vox patch works in the same way, but it uses receptors on other parts of your body to elicit the same response. The moment your receptors touch this Vox technology, it opens up communication pathways throughout your unique system, allowing you to become instantly stronger, more balanced, have less pain, and increased range of motion. In short, Vox technology helps optimize the brainstem, allowing your body to self regulate and self heal. Vox products are non electrical, non invasive, have no negative side effects, no metals, magnets, or plastics, and are drug free. Results are instant, scientifically proven, and time tested. For a limited time, buy any two items and get one pair of socks or thin insoles free, a savings of up to $50. Contact Diane Dinkmeyer at voxlife.com for more info. That's Diane Dinkmeyer at voxlife.com. You'll be glad you did.
I would not be nearly as strong as I am today if I didn't grow up with the childhood I had. And I'm very grateful for that in so many ways because it's made me a very strong, resilient person. And I think that's true for all of us. We need to embrace all the good, bad, and ugly, like you said, in our lives and learn from it and move forward.
There are a lot of people that I've worked with and talked to who struggle with the fact that because of one reason or another, either they were descended from enslaved people or they were adopted, right? And don't know their family history. They don't know who they carry in their DNA.
Mhm.
Um, that's a missing puzzle piece for them. Have you encountered that, and how do you meet that with them?
Well, not so deep as that yet with any of my clients, but a lot of them, a lot of the women that I've worked with have grown up with troubled, immediate family, parents, grandparents. And we do a lot of work around the lessons they've learned from that. But I could see how that would be really challenging as well, because if you don't know, it's harder to deal with, right? You have all that uncertainty, which is one of the things that we have all around us this year.
Yeah.
I would suggest to those people that they really try to focus on what they do know and get to know themselves. And then also, write down what emotions does that cause, not knowing that, right? And then is there anything that they can do to help move them through those emotions? Because I do talk a lot about the things we can control and things we can't control, right?
Right.
So too often we focus on the things we can't control. So I try to tell people, when you're in the middle of a situation or something that's very emotional, try to boil it down to what are the things I can control, even if they're just little things, and make a list. And then make a list of the things you can't control, and actually crumple that list up and throw it away, right? Get it out of your head, because unfortunately, there's nothing you can do. It doesn't serve you to continue to dwell on it. And then focus on the things that you can do, because the more tangible actions that we have to take away from a situation, we want control as human beings. We want connection. We want to be able to know where we're going, and it always helps.
I agree 100%. I think that a lot of people are unclear about what they want. That's a really hard
Mhm.
question. I think that even, comes before those qualities in your personality and so forth. How do you know how to meet the world if you don't know what you want, if you can't envision or imagine better,
Mhm.
right? One of the exercises I often use is to have, like, you make a list, right? I love
Mhm. Yep.
and on the easier answer is, what do I not want, right?
Mm.
Make that
Yep.
list. Make that list. Maybe make the same list for the aspects of yourself that you want to change, right? Make that list first. And then on the opposite side of the page, across from each of those items, and it could be 5, it could be 50,
Mhm.
um, write the opposite of each one
That's
of those,
perfect.
right? Tear the paper in half and burn the negative stuff. Like,
There you
literally
go.
get it off
Yeah.
the planet. Go out into your garden, or get a
Yep.
bowl, a fire safe bowl or something. You just burn it. Just
Mhm.
send it up in smoke. And the next step is kind of a fun one. Get an Altoids tin, or some kind of, like,
Okay.
lozenges
Yep.
or breath mints or something, a little metal box. And take that positive list, fold it up, put it in the box, go out into nature and find a place that you know where it is precisely and that you can go back to, and bury it.
Hmm.
Bury it in the earth like a seed, right? So it's a physical manifestation of something that you are actually doing,
Sure.
right? You're planting a seed for the future.
That's
And whether it's under a bush or under a stone or under a tree, find a place that only you know. Could be in your garden, or it could be in the woods, or wherever. You don't want to go into a public park or something and start digging.
right.
You don't want to go to a beach where the the wind and the weather can blow the sand away. So find a place, bury it, and then every time you achieve one of those things that you want to change about yourself, or about or one of those things that you want to manifest in your life, go and dig it up and cross it off your list and bury it again, and keep doing that until the list is full of crossed off things, and then start another list, start a new list, and keep that process going. Some people keep it going forever, and some people are done with one. It varies, really, but that's right in line, I think, with what you do.
Mhm.
I love.
Yeah. That's a great way to manifest it. And connecting with nature is also really critical too. I think just a way to ground yourself. And it's interesting because when you talk about looking at the opposite, that's such a useful tool in a lot of different ways. And I was doing some work on your core values just last week. And when you're struggling to figure out what your core values are, look at the things that trigger you, right? Look at what are the negative things that trigger you, and think about, like you said, the opposite of that. and you can back into your core values, even if they don't come top of mind to you. So that's a really good exercise, because it goes back to self-awareness and knowing yourself.
All about that. It's all about that.
Mhm.
So as we wrap up this wonderful chat,
This has been great.
this is really wonderful. There are never any prepared questions. It's all very organic and just sort of what's living in us today, and
Mhm.
finding the common ground there, and there's plenty.
Yeah.
I always ask my guests to reflect back on either this conversation or something that we haven't talked about, and offer 3 practical tools that our listeners might be able to take away from this experience.
Okay, well, I have a lot of them, and I love that our conversation evolved to really talking about self-awareness, because to me that's that critical first step. But a couple things, just really daily practices that people can take away that I've been doing, especially this last 8 years on my journey, but really starting every day with positivity. So somewhere in your life, find something positive to start your day. So first thing after you wake up, don't immediately go to your social media, but find something that makes you happy. It could be a picture of your family. It could be a motivational quote. Surround yourself with positivity. So that's the first tip. And if you do that, and I swear to God, if you do that every day for 2 weeks, you will change your mindset. Your brain is like a muscle. And then at night, so think about it bookend. So start every morning with positivity, end every night with gratitude. So before you go to sleep at night, think about the things you are grateful for that day. And sometimes it's hard. It could just be, I'm grateful I made it through the day and I have a bed to sleep in, right? But that's okay, because you're still being grateful. So start every day with positivity, end every day with gratitude. And then the last one is really comes back to that self-awareness. So every time you're in a moment where you're triggered and anxious, try to step back and breathe. Just take a breath and try to think about, okay, what is causing me to feel this way? You're not always going to do it right away in the moment, but even if you reflect afterwards, but take that moment to pause and breathe and try to think about what's triggering you. So I would say those 3 tips, if you really start to integrate them in your life, they can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Wonderful. Great. Well, I am going to, like I say, I will offer up a link to your blog in the description. I'm also
Wonderful.
going to put a link to the Grief Recovery Handbook, because I think that sounds like a really great tool that a lot of people can benefit from. We grieve in many different ways. It's a life skill universally that we don't talk enough about.
Mhm.
And I have done a couple of podcasts, touching on grief. That I'd like to read that book myself. So thank you for that. Um,
Wonderful.
and if there's anything else that you think that people might be interested in, that I can link to, then by all means, let me know. Michelle, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. And I'm really looking forward to building a friendship with you, and more to come. We'll have you back as a guest, maybe in a month or two, and see what the world looks like then.
It's been wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me. All right. Take care.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to The Lost Traveler with Henry Cameron Allen. For more information, please visit www.henryallen.org. Thanks so much for tuning in, and let's all keep striving for a better world. Thank you.